November 1963. John F. Kennedy steps into the streets of Dallas. The crowd is alive, cheering, waving, smiling. He's not just a president, he's hope. Riding through the city in an open motorcade. No fear, no hesitation, cameras rolling, history unfolding in real time. And then a sharp crack echoes through the air. Confusion, screams, panic. The car speeds up, but it's already too late. In a matter of seconds, everything changes. The most powerful man in the world, gone. In broad daylight, captured on camera, replayed for decades. The official story? One man, one gun. But the questions never stopped, because even today, many believe what happened in Dallas wasn't the whole truth. So what really happened that day? In April 1865, Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, stood at the center of a nation finally beginning to heal after years of brutal division and civil war. The fighting was coming to an end, and hope was slowly returning across the country. On the night of April 14th in Washington, D.C., Lincoln attended a performance at Ford's Theater. Inside the theater, the audience laughed and enjoyed the evening, and for a brief moment, the atmosphere felt peaceful. Then everything changed with a single gunshot. Panic spread through the crowd as screams filled the room, and the president slumped forward in his seat. By the following morning, Lincoln was dead, a leader who had preserved the Union, killed just as victory was within reach. July 1881, James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States. A routine morning, a busy train station in Washington. No warning. A gunshot rings out. Chaos. Screams. Confusion. The president collapses, but he's still alive. Doctors rush in, trying to save him. Days pass, then weeks. Pain. Weakness. Infection. What should have been survivable slowly turns deadly. After months of suffering, the president dies. Not just from the bullet, but from the treatment meant to save him. In September 1901, William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, attended a public event in Buffalo, where crowds had gathered to meet him. Standing calmly, he greeted people one by one until a man stepped forward with his hand extended, then suddenly fired two quick shots. Shock, panic, and chaos erupted as the president fell, though he was still alive. Doctors responded quickly, and for several days it seemed he might recover, keeping the nation hopeful as it waited anxiously. However, behind the scenes, an infection began to spread, gradually diminishing that hope. What initially appeared to be a survivable moment turned into a quiet tragedy, and days later, the president passed away. In July 1850, Zachary Taylor, the 12th President of the United States, spent a hot summer day in Washington attending a public event. Shortly after returning, he began to feel unwell. There was no warning and no clear cause. He developed a fever, suffered intense pain, and his condition rapidly worsened. Within just a few days, the president was dead. At the time, doctors attributed his death to illness, but in later years, doubts began to emerge. Some questioned whether it was something he had eaten, while others suspected something far more deliberate. Rumors of poisoning spread, and investigations were carried out, yet no definitive conclusion was ever reached. His sudden death remains a mystery that continues to raise questions even today. In 1923, Warren G. Harding, the 29th President of the United States, embarked on a long journey across the country, drawing large crowds for speeches and public appearances. However, behind the scenes, his health was steadily declining. He suffered from fatigue, pain, and extreme exhaustion. The trip eventually brought him to San Francisco, where doctors initially reported that he was improving and that the worst had passed. Then, without warning, the president suddenly collapsed and died. The official cause was declared to be a heart attack, but questions soon arose due to the lack of an autopsy and conflicting medical reports. Rumors began to spread, leaving many to wonder whether his death was entirely natural or if something had been concealed, casting a shadow of uncertainty over his quiet and sudden passing. April 1945. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, led a nation at war while the world remained on edge. For years, he carried the immense weight of leadership through long days, endless decisions, and constant pressure that few could see. Yet, behind his outward strength, his health was steadily declining. Exhaustion and weakness grew, but he continued to serve. Then, one afternoon, he was struck by sudden pain and collapsed. In silence, the president was gone. In the final days of World War II, the leader who had guided his country through crisis had passed away, not in violence, but worn down over time. In December 1799, George Washington, the first president of the United States, was at his home in Mount Vernon during a harsh winter. After riding through freezing weather, he fell ill, developing a sore throat, fever, and difficulty breathing. Doctors were called and attempted the treatments they knew at the time, including repeated bloodletting, but his condition only worsened. Growing weaker and quieter, he passed away within days. The nation's first leader did not die in battle or from violence, but from illness and the limitations of medicine in that era.